我一直认为人只有在面对死亡的时候才最忠诚。听听那首歌，死了都要爱，不爱到淋漓尽致不痛快，把每天都当成末日来相爱，那是多么忠诚的爱。你说呢？
The most loyal test of love is whether one can still stay together and never abandon each other when facing death. To treat every day as the last day to love each other, that is the highest realm of love. That is why the mentors all sighed and said, die even if loving. The reason still has to start from today's unfortunate couple.
假如说我能拖10几年的话，
老徐，你愿意跟他在一起吗？老徐，
愿意。
就是他就这样，他10几年，你愿意吗？
愿意。
20年，你愿意吗？
愿意。
50年，你愿意吗？
一辈子都愿意。
我不想拖累，他这人很善良，分居2年，以后其实就可以离婚的。
The husband, Mr. Su, is 38 years old and married his wife, Ms. Lei, 11 years ago. They have a 9-year-old son. Their relationship was very good. It could be said this family of 3 lived very happily. But in April 2014, an unfortunate piece of news broke everything. His wife, Ms. Lei, was diagnosed with a malignant tumor. This illness tortured her for 3 long years. At the same time, her husband, Mr. Su, also suffered a lot, but they did not give up because of this. Especially the spirit of the husband never abandoning his wife, it was praiseworthy. But one day suddenly, for some unknown reason, the wife disappeared as if she had evaporated from the world. After the husband's bitter searching, he learned that the wife secretly returned to her hometown in Hunan. Therefore, during the period when his wife left, Mr. Su stayed up all night, afraid something might happen to his wife. So he begged her bitterly, hoping that she could come back to his side, but Ms. Lei insisted on not going home. Helpless, Mr. Su came to the program team to seek help. So what exactly happened between this unfortunate couple? And what will the result be? To know the whole story, we have to go back to 1 month ago.
1个多月前吧，一个发小在广东那边，突然疾病过世了，就我们一帮子发小就过去处理一下那边事情。然后我一回来就发现家里没人了。
In April 2014, his wife, Ms. Lei, was diagnosed with late-stage rectal cancer, and within 1 week she had 3 surgeries in a row, but unfortunately, 2 months later it relapsed again. That means, this illness cannot be cured, it could only be left to fate. So this disease brought earth-shaking changes to the whole family, and the biggest change was to the husband, Mr. Su. He not only had to do housework, but also had to take care of his wife's daily life, and in addition, he had to bear huge financial pressure. All of this, in the eyes of Ms. Lei, was really unbearable, so she chose to leave, not wanting to drag down her husband.
因为他40岁不到而我的这个病，说实话有病例，就是说有拖过10几年的
If it drags on for more than 10 years, it would definitely bring lots of trouble to her husband and this family. To Ms. Lei, that was really unbearable. That is to say, Ms. Lei's leaving was to let her husband be free, to let him find the happiness that was supposed to belong to him. But this was only Ms. Lei's own thought. To her husband, Mr. Su, taking care of a wife with cancer was what he should do, even if it is for a lifetime, he was willing.
假如说我能拖10几年的话，
老徐，你愿意跟他在一起吗？老徐，
愿意。
就是他就这样，他10几年，你愿意吗？
愿意。
20年，你愿意吗？
愿意。
50年，你愿意吗？
一辈子都愿意。
对呀，那人老徐愿意啊。
But the problem is, how could the wife bear to watch her beloved man suffer because of herself? So the better her husband treated her, the more guilty Ms. Lei felt. Therefore she asked her husband for divorce many times, but was always refused. Helpless, Ms. Lei could only use another way to let her husband be free. That was to leave.
我不想拖累，他这人很善良。我这次在走之前我就找我同学问过，分居2年以后其实就可以离婚的。我觉得他这人30多岁吧，我觉得他值得一个更好的人生，值得一个更好的人去照顾他，不要像我这样什么事情都帮不了他，然后我还要拖累他。
It is not hard to hear. Every word Ms. Lei said revealed her guilt to her husband. Only by divorce could she feel at ease. But from the tears of Ms. Lei, one could also feel that reluctance. It was unexpected that after so many years of marital affection, now it had to end in this way. But if not this way, what other way could there be? Could it be possible to let her beloved man really suffer because of her?
我就一直心里有个想法，我说3年这样子过来了，1000多天，你这样子照顾我，什么时候是个头啊？
你自己觉得没头了是吧？
我自己觉得天天照顾我，天天为了我啊，你这也不能去，那也不能去。
Ms. Lay was full of guilt, blaming herself that she could not bring happiness to her husband, but instead had become a burden. In fact, during these 3 years when his wife was sick, her husband Mr. Su did indeed endure a lot of pressure, but this also changed him. Why do I say this? Because before Ms. Lay got sick, Mr. Su was actually a mama's boy, not only without a job, but also not able to do housework, always relying on his mother and his wife to hold up this family. Now that his wife had cancer, and his mother also unfortunately passed away, the only one left to support this family was Mr. Su. It was precisely because of this, Mr. Su went through earth-shaking changes, from a mama's boy who could do nothing, into a good man with responsibility and bearing.
过去因为我可以说没有工作，每天就是他工作下班回家做饭给我吃啊。因为自从3年前我妈也因为癌症也过世了啊。因为以前我妈是我们家的顶梁柱，自从我妈走了之后，一家的重担就全部由我一个人挑起。
But this sudden change also made his wife feel guilty, always feeling that she was dragging down her husband. Facing this situation, Ms. Lay made up her mind to leave. No matter what, she had to find every way possible to divorce her husband.
你是想离开他对吧？真心想离开，是这意思吧？
但是我就是说，现在提离婚的话，他是肯定不会同意的
啊。那你这分居怎么个意思呢？
我分居再去提出离婚的话，法院就会判了吧。
3 years ago, Ms. Lay unfortunately got cancer, and 3 years later she wanted to divorce her husband, even wanted to end this relationship by means of forced divorce. The reason was actually very simple. She did not want to drag down her husband. So what about her husband? Could he really agree? Could he really abandon his wife with cancer for his own sake? Of course not. Because this time the purpose of Mr. Su coming to the program team was to ask his wife to come home. How could he possibly agree to divorce? So, in order to comfort his wife's fragile heart, Mr. Su made a vow on the spot.
你生病的时候我都没有放弃你，到现在3年过去了，我也不可能放弃你，这一辈子我都不可能放弃你。
Yes, how could he possibly give up? Since they chose each other, they should be responsible for each other until the end. A man like Mr. Su, even less would do something faithless, let alone divorce. Perhaps even if separated for a while, Mr. Su would feel reluctant. So the problem was not on Mr. Su's side, it was Ms. Lay who was too pessimistic, her mentality had gone wrong. Since things had already happened, they should face it bravely. Divorce was definitely not acceptable, instead they should happily spend the rest of life with their beloved. This was the mentality a cancer patient should have.
我们为什么不把每一天活得精彩？为什么不把每一天的微笑留给自己爱的人？其实你是有足够的意志力去战胜或者和病魔斗争的。我们把这份力量真的化成一种温和的微笑，留给爱的人，不好吗？所以我在说，不管我们生命有多长，我们把这段日子过好，把微笑留给爱的人，加油吧。
As the saying goes, husband and wife are like birds of the same forest. When disaster comes they fly their separate ways. But today this couple was exactly the opposite. The husband could stay with his wife without abandoning her, and the wife also thought of her husband at every moment. From this we can see that both of them are kind people. But even more fortunate was that Ms. Lay met a good man, who could take care of his wife with cancer meticulously, and still not abandon her. So as the wife Ms. Lay, shouldn't she feel lucky? If she felt it, then she shouldn't bring up divorce again.
两个善良的人在一起，是你们彼此的幸运。责任是什么？责任是我爱你，所以你变成我的责任。什么是负担？这件事情我不想做，所以这件事情才是我的负担。这件事情我想做，怎么会是我的负担呢？你老公很善良，一个能够把自己得了癌症老婆照顾得这么好的一个男人，我相信他以后一定会得到幸福的。 不需要你操心。
A true love is often revealed at the moment of life and death, and today this couple was a living example. But this touching story also made people confused. The reason was, why did the wife want to divorce? Why didn't she cherish this relationship, but instead use a so-called noble act to destroy this romantic story? So the last mentor's attitude was even firmer, angrily persuading Ms. Lei, love should be loved to the fullest, treat every day as the last day to love, even if die still love.
其实对于你们来说，离不离婚都是表面上的事儿，那都是形式上的事儿。你又何必用这种非常形式和肤浅的方式来度量你们之间的感情呢？老徐心里怎么想的？你以为离了你就能离开我的手掌心了吗？你就跑得了了吗？夫妻这一辈子什么事情都可以有商有量，唯独死不能商量。但既然商量不了，就好好过每一天嘛。听听那首歌，死了都要爱，不爱到淋漓尽致不痛快，把每天都当成末日来相爱，那是多么忠诚的爱。你说呢？
The last mentor's words were every word like pearls, deeply describing the meaning of love. Especially the lyrics of the song Die Even If Loving, it was simply tailor-made for this couple. So after the persuasion of the mentors, Ms. Lei finally accepted the reality, changed her mentality, and decided to use the rest of her life to love her husband. Just like this song, Die Even If Loving.
The most touching part of love is never the vows under the moonlight, but staying together without leaving in storms. Ms. Lei wanted divorce because of guilt, not wanting to drag down her husband. But Mr. Su's response made people shed tears, willing for a lifetime. This is the most beautiful look of love, not because of good times to be together, but even if fate is cruel, still willing to stay together until the end. Some say responsibility is a heavy burden, but a true lover will tell you, because I am willing, so this is not a burden, but happiness. Such a couple makes people both heartbroken and envious. Heartbroken that they were tortured by illness, but still never abandoning each other. Envious that in hardship, they still firmly chose love. Perhaps this is exactly what the song, Die Even If Loving, wanted to express. Even if life is limited, still treat every day as the last day to love each other. So, you who are in front of the screen, if it were you, would you choose to persist until the end, or would you choose to let go? Do you think Ms. Lei's choice is greatness and helplessness, or is it sadness of giving up when she shouldn't? Welcome to leave your opinion in the comments section. Let us together witness the truest love under this test of life and death. If you like such stories, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.